Sorry, I was just licking on a delicious eyeball there. So, welcome to Prolix, Comix, Bollix, where we talk about comics. Me and Nick. Hello, Nick. How's it going?
Better before I read a bunch. It's been quite a while since I've read any of this particular author's work, and it's tough going in places.
Yes, that's right. We're doing the collected Bash Street Kids. No,
yes.
Sorry. Sorry, wrong show.
Oh, yeah, sorry. It's the GASH Street Kids, I think we're doing.
So yes, wow. Now that's a crossover. Maruo,
I'm not wrong. One of these books is called something Ultra Gash, right?
Yes. Maruo Suehiro has a go at Bino.
All right.
That has to happen. I'm already thinking. Yeah. Anyway, so we're talking Suehiro Maruo.
Yeah. Not to be mistaken for Seibu Sogo Marui, which is a very disturbing department store that I don't recommend you go to.
What's disturbing about this department?
Nothing. I just found a bunch of department stores that if you string them together sound vaguely like his name.
I see.
So
this
yeah.
was an attempt at humor, is that correct?
Humor that was not going to work for anybody, including yourself, who even lives in Japan. So
yeah, no, that's yeah.
Let's pretend we can cut that and move on.
No. I shall put it on a loop.
Excellent.
Yeah. So
yeah, give us a bit of a potted history here of this.
I don't know too much about him, but he was born in 1956 in Nagasaki. And, it made me laugh. I was looking at his Wikipedia page. It made me laugh that if you're familiar with this guy's work at all, that apparently one of his first attempts at getting published was sending something along to Shonen Jump, and I'm thinking, yeah, no, I imagine they didn't jump at the chance of publishing.
Oh, no.
But of course, he did find home for some of his stuff in Garo, which has come up again and again when we've been talking fucked up and avant-garde Japanese comics, right? So I'm wondering at some point if it's even possible to do an English-friendly version, but it would be interesting to do a sort of Garo special or something.
Yeah, we should dig and see what's available in English. Yeah, because I'd be interested in that for sure.
But so he's kind of in the lineage of the erogro or erotic grotesque comic, right?
Clearly, he left school really early, which is interesting for me. He left school at the end of junior high school. Like he never
early 70s,
school or went to university, which is, I don't know how rare it was then, but it's certainly rare in Japan now not to kind of finish to the end. But obviously he had things he needed to do and get down on paper. He's one of those people who you do feel like probably it's for the best that he has this outlet.
Yeah, I mean, obsessive is the word, right? Like there are certain themes and images that he'll return to again and again and again.
Yeah, he's trying to exercise them or indulge them or some combination of the two.
So I would say specifically, obviously he's interested with the erotic grotesque, and particularly that kind of Taisho in early Showa 20s, 30s era, which I suppose is comparable as well, and there's a little bit of it in here. It's kind of that Weimar thing as well, which is another he's very interested in. Some of his comics are peppered with like stills and stuff, and there's stuff from like Caligari and
Metropolis and stuff.
So he's fascinated in particular with that period, and obviously he's also obsessed with fascist into military
dictatorship
history, both Japanese and German. And we'll get a bit more into like how he approaches that stuff, I suppose. But yeah, those seem to be his main obsessions.
Yeah, and I would say too, I you know, although it's really extreme, but there's a lot of notes of Edogawa Rampo in there as well.
Well, that's what I mean. That era, right, as well.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
But also with the kind of like body mutilation and kind of like there's a lot of stuff that seems to me to remind me of Edogawa Rampo stories I read that touch on the same kind of erotic amputation, weird, just fucked upness.
Oh no, certainly Rampo is definitely in there, but like you said, cranked up
to the max.
Yeah. It's interesting as well. Well, let's get it. So in particular, we decided to talk 2 collections, right?
Yeah. One of them, some of his earliest work, right?
Yes, and then so I kind of chose one which is available in a kind of legit English translation, although it's going back a few years now. I don't know if it's going for silly money now or if it's still reasonably priced, and I'm not sure. And then something that hasn't been officially translated, say for one story, but you can kind of get a scanlation of it if you know how to look. But we'll start with Ultra GASH INFERNO, which put out by Creation Books, with a introduction from Remain Slocum, right? It was funny, one of those names that jumped out at me, like, hadn't thought about him for a while, but he was one of that kind of cluster of non-Japanese, I guess, journalists or writers who were that vanguard who went out and they searched for all this extreme Japanese content before most people had figured out what was going on, right?
Yes, yeah.
French fella. So he's all over. If you like Eros in Hell and stuff like that,
right?
He's all over that stuff, and he put out some of his own photo books, right? Like was it City of Broken Dolls, and like fetish photography, basically, with women in like traction and bandages and stuff like that. Interesting stuff. Anyway, so he writes the introduction to this. So this is basically 9 of his stories from 1981 to 1993.
Right.
And I suppose we'll go through them.
I think we might just go through them story by story here quickly. Yes. So the first one is Putrid Night. Or Night Putrid, I guess, if you're reading that direction. And right away, this one is one of the ones that really makes me think of, and there's one later on that really makes me think of Edogawa Rampo, but ramped up to as high as it goes. So this is, I mean, they're quite nice. They're short, which I appreciate, right? Like they're kind of they're you could see them as short films as well in a way, although I don't want to.
They're almost like fucked up Twilight Zone episodes or something like.
Yes, exactly.
Although Rod Serling would have had a fucking heart attack.
Yes, I think so.
He might have died with a hard-on too, but his family wouldn't have told anyone.
No. So this is one about basically a young man and a young woman who are having kind of an affair. She's with like an older guy, right?
Yeah, he's got himself a young wife, and he's a pervert, and he enjoys doing all sorts of this is the first instance of eyeball licking, but it won't be the last.
No, God no.
Clearly a thing for Maruo.
And then and so this one has a kind of it has this momentary kind of little noirish thing where the young wife gets her boyfriend to try to assassinate the husband, and it goes spectacularly badly.
Yes.
Turns out that he has a samurai sword in his bed that he knows how to use. And
yeah.
Slices off the young man's arms, and then And then it's a really strange ending, right? Because like they, I mean, spoilers here. I assume go ahead and read these. Stop now if you really want to. Stop now and find this and read it.
Read it to your children at bedtime.
Yeah, because like he locks both of them up after he sort of amputated bits off of both of them, locks them up in some sort of part of his house, and then he's spying on them and seeing that they're still very much in love despite being
it's a sex-crazed amputee sex show, right? To which he spoils himself while watching as well.
Yes.
And add this little it's a nice sick fuck of a little a nice introduction to the world of Maruo Suehiro, right? Like
I guess start like, as you mean to go on.
Yeah. It's like I see. Okay, so the guardrails are off then.
Completely.
Yeah.
The last two lines of the story are as he spies through, my God, shit.
Next one is maybe my absolute favorite.
Sewer Boy, who returns. Apparently he was maybe he was thinking about spinning him off into his own Shonen Jump, like One Punch Man.
Dear Shonen Jump, please find enclosed the further adventures.
The first episode of Sewer Boy.
Dear Mr. Maruo, thank you very much for your interest. We must kindly decline because there's something wrong with you.
Deeply wrong with you.
But Sewer Boy is fantastic. Sewer Boy is it's about a baby that's been thrown away in the toilet and grows up
in the sewer.
To be a young man who kind of, it's funny. What I like about this one is, we should say all the way through as well, the artwork is superb, right? Like, I mean, the artwork is truly
in this very stylized, as you said, and it really does evoke that sort of Showa era,
early it also Taisho to show that kind of 30s, like almost chiaroscuro sometimes.
But it's funny how many horror comics in Japan, even older horror comics, kind of have maybe not as refined or as intense as what he's doing, but they have this kind of look about them. I remember going into like a haunted house in Odaiba. In the section of Odaiba, one of the shopping centers there has this whole like Showa era street thing, right? You know the place I'm talking about? Yeah. And they have this haunted house there, and the paintings on the outside of that and inside are kind of like this, only dialed back to where it's okay,
So it's acceptable in polite society.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So he basically haunts toilets, pretty much. Squat toilets. If you've been to Japan, you might know what they look like.
Eats shit. And my favorite touch is when one woman using the toilet has run out of toilet paper, he licks her asshole clean, which she isn't expecting, before being pulled down into. I don't know what I love about this comic, right? This particular, I think this strip is this one really sent me off, like to have, like, I could set entire fan fiction in this weird world. And what I like about it is it exists in this, like, there's no attempt at realism, right? So according to this comic, like each squat toilet is like a direct portal into an ocean of shit underneath.
It's just an open pit. It's more like, I guess, what maybe actually outhouses are, right? Which sometimes are like that, right? But like in Japan,
only like
in the city,
like a one
in Tokyo,
pit, right?
You're not. Yes.
Yeah. But it's amazing. Like in this world, you can imagine people fall down the toilet all the time, right?
Just swept away in the tides of.
But it's just it's an extraordinary. I don't know. It's the one for me that stepped beyond into this whole new universe, almost this inky underground universe. Just fantastic.
This is a multiverse this is a multiverse I don't want to visit.
Sewer Boy's my choice, I think, is my
okay. Yeah, so
you
were gonna order the T-shirt.
I would happily wear a Sewer Boy. Yeah, action figure. Yes, please give me with little like turd accessories that you can feed it.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, on to A Season in Hell, which is
I should say what's interesting about all of these stories is that apparently a lot of his early work, like they very selectively chose these stories because they're somewhat comprehensible. Apparently, a lot of his early stories are supposedly like you have no idea what the hell they're really about, or it's almost just like a sensory overload, a series of really arresting, disturbing images, but don't necessarily string together to tell a story.
Well, we'll get to that a little bit when we get to the next collection. Yeah. And some other collections of his that because I have read some of his other stuff as well, and yes, there are definitely the studio experiment tracks on the album, right, between the proper songs.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of that. But this one reminded me a lot of, I can't remember what it's one of Hisayasu Sato's really early pink films from the 80s, which is about basically an angry teenage boy, whoever eventually kind of ends up murdering his entire family and of course defecating and pissing on them and incest and whatever. This reminded me of. I'm guessing Sato Hisayasu must be a big Suehiro Maruo fan, actually, because he's got that like angry young man kind of thing, but gone scatological or something, or if you thought the young men of the 60s were angry, like they were mild compared to this.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these characters definitely seem to be mentally unsound, right? Struggling in some way, right?
Right.
And then you wonder how much of this is sort of, well, we'll get to that when we get to the stories where he starts telling you about stuff from his own life, and you're like, okay, author, wow. So yes, there's that's the one where he begins with him finding like a murdered girl on the road, and then it's kind of weird.
Right.
This story kind of comes full circle, and and then in the end, he murders his parents. He also,
well, that is this one, right? That is the season.
That's this. Yeah, and it's also the one where like, that's that scene of like this giant snail appearing in his like curtain saying "Good evening, it's me again," and he shouts like, what the fuck?
So anyway, you might be getting a bit tired around now. Sit down, relax, take a load off. May I offer you some shit soup?
Yes. This is the story I was just mentioning, where it has a very very interesting coda at the end, or a little like piece of information for the reader. Maybe something you can try at home.
Yeah. This one begins with a cow's eye being inserted into someone's vagina.
Yep.
And then
by themselves, I should say. The person is doing this to themselves.
And then just kind of escalates or descends
into utter madness and filth.
And golden showers aplenty, and it's a good.
And coprophagia.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's shit eating, by the way, for any stupid people.
And that's the one that ends with the during my boyhood I once happened to taste some shit. Of course, it was my own.
Yes. Well, thanks. It's interesting. It's a double quote, isn't it? Because it's a quote by Jean Genet first.
Yes.
And he says something about tasting his own shit, and then Maruo kind of takes it a little bit further and says something along the lines, actually, it's not as foul smelling tasting as you might think, just a little bit bitter.
Yeah, and if you think I'm lying, try it for yourself.
Yeah. So brings me to the question, Nick. Have you ever tasted your own shit?
No, I have not, Clive.
No. I've drunk my own piss, but I've not tasted my own shit. Is it on the bucket?
Prolix Comics Bollix, everyone.
The classy comic show. Is it on your bucket list?
No.
Oh, okay.
No,
right.
No, it is not. That's not a bucket I'm looking to eat out of, Clive.
Not on mine either, but now that he mentions it, it's like, well, yeah, I suppose, yeah, I don't know. Anyway,
all right.
On to the Great Masturbator. About a man who really misses his aunt.
Yes.
A heartwarming story.
Yes, we get into this one's even more so, like, if you thought that all of the eyeball related licking from earlier stories was upsetting in any way, this was the one where the young man has a sty in his eye that his auntie is licking in order to make it better or something like that. But maybe it might just be causing the styes, possibly, yes, with the bacteria and all. Yeah, this one's plenty gross too.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It's almost a futile attempt to put it into levels of violence. Really, it's all.
This one has a young man who has a good wank onto somebody's gravestone.
Yes,
and then bashes his head in against said stone.
Yeah. I actually knew a bloke who used to jerk off in graveyards.
This is before you came to Japan, or since you've been in Japan?
Yeah, no, this was in sixth form college, actually, oddly enough. A strange dude who I knew briefly. It was quite funny. There was like I remember one of his things he said, which made me and our friend Robin Frenchroll, who was on the same laugh out loud, just because it was such an interesting way of looking at the world. There was like one girl in the class who like everyone fancied, and of course there's different ways to express this, but this one guy, he said something along the lines of, "Oh man, she's hot as fuck. I want to wear her on my head as a helmet." Like he wanted to like stretch her vagina out and stick it on his head and walk around. I thought, oh, that's interesting. I'd never thought of things in that way. I'm sure he would love Maruo.
Yeah. I have no doubt. I mean, it reminds me of, we might have talked about this before, we probably have. But when I lived in Victoria, it was infamous for kind of grave robbing and grave haunting by the local.
Oh, that's right, because you grew up in the 19th century, didn't you?
Like, yes, yeah. Not the Victoria.
I'm guessing they don't. They no longer
sell the Victorian era.
They no longer sell cadavers to Dr. Knox or something. Like, what are they grave robbing for? Are they valuables or?
Well, no. So basically, there was like, and I think it was one of these things where like it was there had been a very well-known and influential paperback novel. It was one of these things where like it turned out to be like complete malarkey, but basically it was about this young girl who claimed to have been ritually abused by the satanic cult, and apparently it was all in Victoria, British Columbia, was where this was supposed to have taken place. And so it created the situation where it was in no way
satanic panic era.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
And so, but apparently it created a situation where therefore a weirdly large number of Satanists then sort of went to there thinking, well, okay, apparently this is the satanic mecca of Canada. So you ended up with a higher number of Satanists in Victoria than maybe other areas that were concentrated. And so you'd have this thing where so I knew a reasonable number of them when I lived there, because with kind of like the punk rock community and the anarchist community, there was always these kind of overlapping Venn diagrams with other weird stuff going on.
Did they shop at Satanists R Us?
Yes.
Right.
And so I knew a couple of guys, and then I knew people who were in the black metal community, and obviously there's going to be some overlap there again, right? But I remember like quite famously there was a massive windstorm that took a bunch of trees down, and the tree roots, the trees in graveyards, they caused coffins to like burst up out of the earth, and immediately like there was like crowds of Satanists who were like on the phone to each other, like, "You've got to get down to the graveyard, man. You're not going to believe what's happened." They all ran down, started pulling skulls out and getting photographs taken with them. I mean, this is that era of like, really of that black metal, like who was the lunatic who killed people in the Burzum guy.
I know, the Burzum guy.
Yeah. So that kind of stuff is all going on. So it's
name was
very
probably like fucking Chaos or something, or some.
Yeah. So it was that era of kind of like where that stuff was chic. I mostly remember, though, actually, it also happened that there was a graveyard that was built down right by the seashore, and because of erosion, occasionally there would be burials at sea 50 years after the person had been buried. Because like a coffin would just get out of the side of the cliff wall and then go out to sea. Yes. Yeah. But anyway, yes. So graveyard haunting is apparently part of cultures all around the world.
Thanks, anthropologist Nick. Raven of Oedipus.
What's this one about then, Clive?
Well, this is the very Rampo. Is it very much like that?
This is the one that really reminds me of one of his.
Yeah. So this seems to be an extremely corpulent, basically half man, cared for in an incestuous way by his daughter, while he seems to increase in size, and she's going out with some dapper, snappy dresser in a fedora.
Yes. Who really wants to meet her dad?
Yes.
He's like, I'd love to meet your dad. And she's like, ooh, I don't know if that's going to happen. He does at the very end.
Yeah, that's an interesting last panel, right? Because he's just kind of like, like, he doesn't freak out or anything. It's just,
okay.
Yeah. Interesting. Sewer Boy's back. Apparently, although I wouldn't have put it together if the title hadn't been Sewer Boy Paradise. It doesn't actually have much to do with the earlier classic Sewer Boy, unfortunately. This seems to be about some kind of is he supposed to be in some way transgendered? He kind of looks like that, doesn't he? Who mesmerizes a bunch of schoolgirls with his piss.
That's what it seems like,
And then they there's a whole bunch of violent sex with that. Like there's like orgies, but then all of a sudden there'll suddenly be someone like ramming like a broomstick up someone's asshole or something. Or voyeur in the attic again, Rampo, right?
Yes.
This is up.
Yes, but this is one where the art style has definitely, you could see the evolution really clearly in this book from the earlier stuff to this. This is where you can see, okay, he's really sort of gotten the style nailed down. Things are very
yes.
The draftsmanship is stronger.
But unless you think that a kind of cheeky game of one-upmanship involving an infant's corpse is not amusing, you might want to stay away from this one.
Maybe not your cup of tea.
Man, this one is dark, isn't it?
Yep.
I mean, even amongst the other stuff, this one made me think, oh man, really? Wow, wow, Maruo, you are one fucked up dude. I love you. So finally we have the longest story of the bunch, right? Non-resistance city.
Yes.
Which is really an encapsulation of, because the other stuff doesn't have so much of his obsession with the war and post-war period.
Post-war, yes.
Which would dominate a lot of his other work, but it's certainly here. So this is set in 1946, kind of destitute mother and son, and her husband has probably died in the war, but she hasn't got official notice yet, so she's not sure. Meanwhile, they're befriended by a very short man who clearly has some sort of, intentions for her, but buys them like food and things, and makes them indebted to him, and then offers her a job at his yakitori store. That's grilled chicken on sticks. And slowly we kind of Yeah, well, eventually he ends up, spoilers again, murdering and dismembering the son and feeding it to her as yakitori. And then it gets even nastier and darker and fucked up. And there's a brief interlude which confused me a bit with a couple of huge American GIs, right? It's quite a fascinating thing they do in this, where all the Japanese are super short, right? Especially our main guy, and all the GIs are fucking massive, right?
Yeah.
And they're always like, groping local women, saying things like "whip it to me, baby," and but they're repelled by a crucifix, right?
Yes.
This bit confused me somewhat. I was the rest of it I was kind of following, and then this bit I wasn't sure if it was. Well, I wasn't sure if it was me confused or if it was Maruo being confused.
Right.
And that's nice grim suicide stroke abortion. And then
possibly her husband might show up.
Could
maybe
be. Yeah.
It's unclear.
Sitting really still, like a dog and a man are seen sitting really still, so people just think they're stones, so they don't bother with them. So I think a cute little puppy ends up in a stew as well, which is something happens again in memorably in I suppose Maruo's maybe most famous work outside Japan, Mr. Arashi's amazing show, which they turned into an anime, which is quite the thing. You've seen that, right?
I've never seen the one that's called Midori.
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, actually, I found someone tried to do a live action version of it called Shoujo Tsubaki. Didn't quite work. It's admirable that someone had a go at it, but actually I was kind of surprised and not surprised, I suppose. Like, so reading this collection especially, what I realized was, and this is quite a long thing I went on thinking about, so I'll get to that maybe at the end. Let's stick to it. What did you make of Ultra Gash Paradise as a collection then, Nick? Is this one that you immediately went out and bought copies of for all your family and friends?
No.
Surprised me.
No, I had forgotten quite how, because this is I think maybe the only one that I had read before. It was lent to me years and years ago, and I like a paper copy, I'm pretty sure. It was one of those things that seemed worse coming back to it at 48 than it might have been when I was 22, when I was probably more used to having to like scrub the retina of my mind's eye with bleach every now and again to try to get stuff out of there. But yeah, this was
we'll come back to this theme at the end. Actually, this is something that interests me.
It was tough going. It was interesting. Of all of them, the last one was the most story-like, because it obviously was like a much longer piece, right? And so there was more time to kind of build up tension, and it wasn't so much kind of just so like in your face, like
right.
This, so
it's more of a
it's a slow motion car
crash.
And so, but it did make me appreciate that he can slow down. He can present you with a relatively standard, straightforward kind of narrative, and it's still just as upsetting and effective in that way. But the other stuff is more, the other stuff is just it's like a series of gut punches, in a way.
Yeah. One does wonder if you have a non-depressing strip like ever, like if he's ever had a go at it.
Just doesn't work. But it's I mean, I suppose if you have an exceedingly dark sense of humor,
I mean, some of it is pretty funny. I mean,
right.
I think if you give yourself over to, because that's the thing though. So there's a certain amount of troll-like button pushing, but I think what makes this collection and all of his stuff actually interesting is that I feel at least that it goes way beyond that. Like, as fucked up as it is, this seems really personal to me. Like, he's clearly working through stuff, and and that's not to whitewash and to say he isn't, to a certain extent, deliberately slumming it and wallowing in stuff as well. That's part of it, right? That's part of it. But it's not just, I mean, if you wanted endless, even more grotesque, just images of repellent sexual violence stuff, there's a whole world of that out here in manga form, which is depressingly without any depth.
Right.
You know, it is just someone, it's just being bashed over the head with horrible imagery for the sake of it. I mean, I've read some of it, and that stuff leaves me a lot more depressed than this does, because I feel as if this does have there's something there, like something like Sewer Boy, for example. If you just wanted to do Sewer Boy or something horrible and look, you know, he eats shit and hangs out in the sewer or something, it wouldn't look like this. It wouldn't have this weird existential Twilight world kind of feel to it, right? There's something, there's a world view here.
You know, it's very consistent from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Right.
And I understand some people might not want to get on board with it. I kind of understand that. But I think it's a worthwhile, like when I finish this, you know, like I said, I've read other just straight out violent pornographic filth, and you know, sometimes after that you know, you do want a palate cleanser, you know,
right? But
that's not my takeaway from, or that's not my only takeaway from this. Like, I feel as if something's been transmitted to me,
right?
Even if I'm not quite sure what that is.
Some sort of STD.
What do you make? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I feel a little bit as if you might. Was this like not something you wanted in your life at the moment? That you seem like you found it slightly more distasteful than I did. I mean, it is distasteful, but that's not my overriding.
Yeah, no, it's just as you said, it's an acquired taste, and it's yeah, it's funny. As I said, I think I was probably in a different place when I was in my early 20s for this kind of stuff, and it's not. Yeah, it's slightly tougher going. Slightly tougher going at 48 than it was at 22 or 21. It's just and I mean, maybe wallowing is not the right word, but there that element of like dark for dark's sake, you know, and the button pushing for button pushing's sake. Yeah, it's as I said, I think it's definitely going to be for not for everybody.
Yeah, so reading this actually did get me onto thinking about something, and you were saying about how you reacted differently to this in your, you know, teenage years or early 20s or something to now or whatever. And it's quite interesting. So I know exactly what you mean, but so what I was thinking about, Liz, so, and I think this is specific to our demographic as well, just because this is when this happened to have coincided with, right? So in general, when you're younger and you're getting into horror and exploitation and stuff like that, there's that impetus to find the most extreme content or whatever when you're in your teenagers and, you know, into your early 20s maybe as well a little bit, and you want to, you know, you check out the most gory horror films or the most fucked up pornography, or, you know, whatever. You're just looking, you're, you know, a bit of an edge lord, right? You're out there looking for, as I believe they call them nowadays,
these days, yes,
looking for, you know, that stuff. And then you kind of get over that, right? You get it out of your system, and then you kind of lose the taste for a little bit. You're like, yeah, no, I'm good. I don't need to see all the Faces of Death sequels,
Mhm.
you know, and good, and then and that's, you know, a thing I think more universal, but specifically in our case because of our age and when we came along and what was happening, a lot of stuff came along, Japanese stuff, right, at a certain point, and we were kind of devouring it almost all at the same time, whether it be film or comics or stuff like, you know, and yeah, and it kind of all got mulched together in a way, right? So you would have been reading Maruo Suehiro's comics, you would have been reading Hideshi Hino, you would have seen the Guinea Pig film, and then you would see like some of the earlier Mika Takashi and Ichi the Killer, and yeah, some pornography out of Japan, and you know, all this stuff would have been like, we'd have equated it with each, you know.
And and the Peroxido whatever things as well, right?
Yeah, all that stuff.
Same time,
somehow just you know, just so happened that all the media and all the crazes and everything coalesced at exactly that time, and for the right age, more or less. We're kind of about the same age. That would have just, and many people our age will
late teens, early 20s when it was, when all that stuff was showing up in video shops, and
and Japan seemed to be like the place, like, oh my god, what's this crazy country, what is it doing, what is this, all this stuff out there, and we're all hit at the same point, right? And then when you kind of lose interest in that a little bit as well, I think, again, because we were all, because you were assaulted by it all at the same time, I think we slightly unfairly lump it all together, right? And because there was also a lot of, and I think now coming round and re-watching and rereading some of this stuff, it's really fascinating because you're seeing it, because you're no longer just living on a diet of that, or just you're not just looking for the outrage. Back in the day, you were cherry picking the outrageous stuff, and then maybe that was your reason for approaching it. So then when you were seeing, so you weren't seeing, like, for instance, Maruo Suehiro's stuff, I would imagine if you didn't have the eyes to see it, if you just thought this stuff was disgusting, it would be indistinguishable from a lot of other similar things. You know, yeah, this is the same thing. This is you know, Toshio Maeda stuff, Hideshi, you know, all this, that tentacle porn. It's the same fucking thing. It's just an excuse for sex and violence. You know, you just wouldn't have the eyes to see it. And in those days as well, I think we weren't seeing it, even though we were more favorable, we were just seeing the outrageous things. What's interesting now is coming back and revisiting some of this stuff, is seeing it in the proper context and seeing it as a kind of lineage, and how much each stuff is like. Now I realize that Maruo Suehiro's stuff isn't a thing like other people.
No, it's highly idiosyncratic,
individual,
highly him, and his interests and his obsessions, and getting them onto paper. And I mean, the one thing I would say is that he is and was a big fan of that kind of eroguro woodblock print stuff, right? And so you can do see his work as an outgrowth of that historical kind of but yeah, no, I agree, and I'm not saying it's without value. It certainly has value as an artistic statement of somebody. You know, we know there's you know, there's things like Salo, which is a great film, but not an easy film to watch, right? Or things like the Marquis de Sade, right? You know, which is has its place in
but again, what my point is that that's, in a way, that's a different. The only thing that links it is that it's has this outrageous content as a part of it, right?
I don't know about that. With Salo, I think the fascism, scatology, you know, there's like there's quite a few.
See, I would disagree, because I think the approach is different, because I think Pasolini is extremely political, isn't he?
There's a political element there, which is harder to parse.
I think Maruo Suehiro I'm not saying he's not political, and clearly he must be fascinated by that whole era, and clearly, I will get into Paranoia Star, he's fascinated by how, you know, men become monsters and all of that and stuff. But I feel as if he's less interested in, and not in his personal life, maybe. I mean, it would be actually fascinating to talk to him about, like, what he thinks about things like,
what are your politics?
You know, changing the constitution.
Is there any intent
changing the constitution so we have a, you know, is he in that camp of Japanese people who are suspicious of themselves and don't trust themselves to and they think things are going to be relived like the 30s, or is he from, you know, but in his work, in his comics, I think he's deliberately excised the conversation around, like, oh, there's a monster inside all of us and the 80s, and he's totally removed. I don't think he's interested in discussing, is that the case? Are we all capable of this? But I'm not saying he's not interested in that. I'm just saying he doesn't put that in his art. He's just interested. He's taken it for granted. He's like, yes, let's just take it for granted that we're all fucking horrible. And if we can get away with it, we'll do horrible fucking things. And now let's play with that, and let's play with these stereotypes, right, of the era, like across the board, the huge giant GIs and the evil-looking Japanese soldiers doing horrible. Like, he's and at least in the art, like, I don't think he's interested in necessarily the politics of it. He's more interested in, I don't know exactly, he's interested in the iconography of it, or how that makes him feel, and really digging into the atavism of it, and trying to kind of, do you know what I mean? He's really, I don't think he's interested so much in the conversation around it. Like, again, he might be in real life, but that's not part of that.
There's nothing, there's nothing didactic in these. There's you don't get to the end of any story and be like, ah, yes, I see what he's trying to teach me here. You know, there's no question. I mean, the abject seems to me to be the thing that he's looking to explore. Really, more than anything else. I mean, I would say these are all stories of abjection in various ways. It's interesting to me when we get to the second book where he kind of moves into like science fiction-y territory, for example. That I was like, I'd like to kind of see more of that in a way. That kind of, like, again, because you get into this more overtly Twilight Zone-y, Philip K. Dick kind of mode with the Electric Ant story, right?
Slightly less, not comfortable exactly, but it's not, you can tell he doesn't come back to that stuff necessarily as often, right?
I mean,
the itch that he's scratching again.
There's a sense of sureness in the other stuff, like this is my wheelhouse. This is what I know,
right?
And that's a bit more. He's maybe experimenting to see if he can get the same effect from a different, you know.
Just getting back to it. So you were saying how this affected you more, and I agree with you. This certainly, I reacted to this more than I would have when I was, just because it's, I'm seeing it for its own worth, right? And I'm not necessarily connecting it to anything else, even though it does have this kind of Edinburgh thing to it. But in some ways, it has nothing to do with a lot of other stuff, and that makes me appreciate it a lot more. And it also makes me interested in seeing, going back and revisiting other things as well, like with these, not kind of with these new eyes, I guess, or just with a greater sense of not othering something to this world of weird, dark Orientalism or something like that, right? It seems to be doing it a disservice a little bit. I mean, you know, that's how we came to it, and that's all well and good. That's fine. But I think it's important to kind of go back and disassociate it from that at a certain, because it would be easy for us to, like, marginalize it in our minds to, oh yeah, I remember that period of my, you know, like, yeah, I remember reading Maruo, and then I watched Ichi the Killer, and then I, you know, and I think that's slightly unfair to all these things, and I think it is worth going back and kind of taking a look at each thing,
on their own merits.
Almost like a museum piece or something, you know, like properly polishing it and dusting it off the edges and putting it in a frame and looking at it in and of itself. I think that's worth. What I mean is, I think our generation then, or our generation of oddballs, is maybe it's the time now for us to come back and do that, because it's interesting. Younger people than us, for example, who didn't watch Evil Dead Trap on a fucked up VHS, have only ever seen it on a HD Blu-ray, they're seeing Evil Dead Trap as Evil Dead Trap, right? As opposed to seeing it on a tape with something else, or equating it to Tetsuo, or and I'd say there's no connect. Obviously, there was something in the air a little bit, but I just feel as if, well, now is, for me at least, now is the time to go back and kind of put that stuff, look at it properly and look at it in the right context, and kind of take it out of that mire a little bit, because that's a glut that we created, right? Our group or whatever created happenstance. So it's nice to pluck that stuff out and put it up and have a look at it and go, that's interesting. This actually has more in common with this, and this has more in common with this, as opposed to, oh yeah, it's just a bunch of
was this John Zorn's fault?
Well, he certainly did put Maruo's stuff on Naked City CDs, right? And I think it was all our faults, right? And not necessarily our fault. I think we were, you know, like that Eros and Hell book, and I think we were seized by, actually, in retrospect, and we've talked a little bit about how he seems to have gone on to be a more problematic individual when it comes to publishing rights and things like that. But that Eros and Hell book actually was, I always really liked that book, because it seemed to have that slight distance even back. Like, that's a really good overall survey that doesn't make lazy comparison. That still holds up, that book. So, but do you see what I mean? Do you see why I might have this imperative to do this? Like, I get it might not be your time to do it, or you might not be that time in your life to do that, or, you know, you might be something else. But what I'm saying, does it kind of make sense to you?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think at that time, this stuff all kind of came, as you said, at the same time. It was a bit of it was an overload, and it was also exciting. There was the excitement of the new, and the excitement of the, like, as I said, like that the extreme and the abject and the rest of it. I remember thinking there was a while where any movie that had Ricky in the title must be incredibly, you know, because like Fudo, whatever it was called, you know, the Miike film and Story of Ricky seemed to appear on the same week on video shelves. And it was.
But also, I think important is not just the excitement and the buzz, but also the burnout, right? That's the bit that maybe soured and thought, oh, there's no point going back, and it's like, you know, I'm done with that kind of thing. And I think that's unfair, because obviously there was a lot of crap as well. There was a lot of stuff that was just button pushing, and, you know, and was childish. Nowadays, actually, there's probably even more of that. I mean, all those zombie ass Toilet of the Dead zombie school, blah blah. That stuff is just, I mean, I suppose there's a few examples which are worth checking out, but by and large, I mean, that is a book you can judge by the cover, right? Like this looks like fanboy trash, and I've got burnt every single time. I'm like, no, give it a go. Someone says this is go, I get burnt every single time. It's just, no, this is juvenile. crap. And nothing against juvenile crap, but it's not fun juvenile crap, and it is stuff I saw a million years ago done so much better, right? So I think there's more of that now, maybe. But anyway, I am rambling now. So Paranoia Star. Some color in this one.
Yep.
No rainbows, but some color.
No, definitely not.
And once again, I mean, I think almost all of his stuff I've read, other than Mr. Arashi's Freak Show, seem to be collections of short stories, right? Like,
yes, yeah.
I'm not sure how many. The only one, actually, the one I'm really keen to read is New National Kid.
Okay.
So this is the one. So there was a tokusatsu show, an early black and white tokusatsu show from the 60s called National Kid. And he seems to have taken National Kid and, yeah, again, as far as I can tell, cross-pollinated it with that fascistic world of the 30s. So, yeah, it's very much the Alan Moore superhero as fascist.
Yes,
but I'm sure taken to an extreme degree, right? But the reason I haven't read it is because I think I'll get more out of it if I familiarize myself
with National Kid. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to watch National Kid and then read. We'll do it as part of this or Film Crack or something. There's no subs, I don't think, out for any of the National Kid stuff. I don't know how easy or it is to follow without. I'll give it a try.
Okay.
And then because someone's done a scanlation of New National Kid as well. So, but apart from that, it seems like most of his stuff is this kind of format, right? The short story collection.
Yes. Yeah.
So what do we want to say about? I mean, Paranoia Star has got a lot more of. You were mentioning that earlier, that there is that side of him of almost total stream of consciousness.
Yes.
Non-narrative.
Yeah, this one's much, as I said, this one has a lot more, like, there's a lot more videodrome-y stuff. Like, there is a TV that has lips in it, you know, it seems more Cronenberg-y, and again, and in a way less less narratively clear. Like, there's a lot more muddiness and kind of just strangeness going on here.
Speaking of films, he's clearly a cinephile as well, isn't he?
Oh yeah.
Across both of these, a lot of stills from films, and even occasional. There's like one. So there's one story in here called "Triumph of the Will," which is about a half Jewish kid who grows up to become a Nazi. And there's when he swings a little boy or little girl around and smashes their head against a wall. I mean, that's clearly that's Donald Sutherland in 1900, right? The Bertolucci.
Yes,
that's straight out of there, right? So he does make these little allusions to cinema as well, right? He's little homages, I guess.
This one has a lot of it gave me a real fear of like unspooled audio tape. There's like more than one story that has these weird scenes of like people being wrapped up or tied up or it's spilling out of their mouths or
it does seem like a progress in some way, doesn't it? Like he's gone deeper into the id or something. And
again, it just has this feeling of like, it seems like it reminds me a little bit of Philip K. Dick at its weirdest.
You were talking about, there's that story, An Electric Ant, right?
Yeah.
It's actually quite out of character. It's a man kind of discovering that he might be a robot. That's as much as I could kind of figure out about it. But it's good. I mean, it is a good, but it is uncharacteristic, right? Although it does have his flavor to it. I mean, I don't think Philip K. Dick would have quite written it like this.
Nope.
And there's I tell you, the oddest one for me is the opening one, which is set in like Shanghai of the 30s or something, and some man turns up and his hand detaches to like, and then that's as comprehensible as I could.
Yep.
I mean, it's an interesting collection. I mean, I can see why this one might not. Oddly enough, though, this is the collection that Planet of the Jap came from, right?
Yes. But what's weird about that is that I realized upon rereading it now that only the dialogue is translated.
No. I think what it is for this scanlation that we read, because if you at the very last page, it has the credits for who translated it. They said all of this has been translated apart from Planet of the Jap, because you should go out and buy Comix Underground Japan. To see the okay. So it doesn't properly translated. So the first time you read it would have been all translated properly.
Yes, that makes more sense. Yeah, but you still get it pretty clearly without the
Was it Blast Books who put that out? I think the Comix Underground Japan collection.
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember.
I don't know if there was any other Maruo in there, but certainly Planet of the Jap was. And this is kind of an alternative reality where the Japanese and the Germans kind of won the war, right? And
like the Man in the High Castle, only way harsher.
No, because Man in the High Castle is quite melancholy, subdued thing, which this is not.
Although we don't know what happened immediately upon the end of the war, right? Because Man in the High Castle is set, some years later, right?
But that's a good example of that again, that highlights that's kind of dealing with similar subject matter, and Philip K. Dick's interested in this part of it.
Yeah.
And Maruo Suehiro's interested in this part of it. Like all the cerebral stuff has kind of been removed to a certain extent, and then it's like how do you illustrate, or something like that, like to its most extreme. No, it's fascinating. I mean, but I can see why it was necessarily maybe this wasn't. I mean, it's a tougher. I mean, Ultra GASH Inferno, I suppose, is a tough shell if you have sensibilities.
Yes,
but at least it's
or a sensitive stomach.
But at least it makes sense if you see. Paranoia Star is obviously a bit more avant-garde, and there are people like you and me who read Ultra GASH Inferno, and then there are other people who are just sickos searching out, horror. They would probably have less patience with Paranoia Star because it's not just an endless parade of
grossness and atrocities.
Although there's plenty of that in there as well. So this is, I don't know, it's interesting. It's Paranoia Star is, I mean, so this is the thing, right? I think this might be the divisive line between you and me here, maybe, is so coming back to this and reading these two, I am pretty much definitely a Maruo Suehiro completist now, I think. Like, I'm really hooked. I want to know more. I want to see more. I'm really fascinated. I sense as if you might be slightly like, I enjoy this, but you might not be tracking down all his stuff, or am I reading you wrong there? You seem slightly.
No, I think you're right. I can't see myself right now anyway making an extra special effort to kind of immerse myself completely in the sewer along with Sewer Boy. I think I think I'm fine with having come back to it, but and in some ways I might have enjoyed Paranoia Star more, partly because I think I had read the other stuff before a long time ago and I hadn't read Paranoia Star, and I kind of liked this weird drift into this sort of semi science fiction-y whatever was going on there.
It is definitely a progression, which is interesting. And yes, like I said, I'm interested to read it all, like to go back and to go forward as well.
I
mean, I don't know. I should have looked this up actually. I don't know. is he still fairly productive? I don't know when the last thing he put out was. Like...
Okay. According to 2008 seems to be the most recent like thing that's got a lot of, you know, Strange Tale of Panorama Island.
All right, which I have a copy of actually.
Adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe, and yes. It was translated. I mean, it's one of the things I think that was translated into English as well.
I have a copy of it. I have a hard cover of it, and it's interesting actually because if you take that as an example, he has transitioned, if that's anything to go by, he has transitioned out of the more extreme visions, and that is definitely in the erotic grotesque arena.
Mm-hmm.
Much more subdued. I mean, beautifully drawn as well. I mean, his skill as an artist has increased, even like really beautifully drawn, black and white again. But I'm not sure if that's him maybe matching, because that's a fairly that's a fairly what's the word I'm looking for? True to the source.
So like it shows high fidelity to the original Edgar Allan Poe story.
Not authentic. What's the word? Fuck. I hate when this happens. This happens the older you get. It's so annoying. It's a word that you use all the time. Faithful. Mm-hmm. Hey, faithful. It's faithful. A very faithful.
I think shows high fidelity too is a decent synonym for. It has too many words in it, but for faithful.
Yeah, but I think of that horrible film with Jack Black and.
Fair enough.
I know some people love that, but no, fuck off. School of Rock up your ass. So I don't know if that's like him deliberately matching the material,
source material, yeah.
And then maybe straight after he made, Sewer Boy is back, and it was, But it did feel as if it was him really kind of getting to grips with like a text almost of the things that interest him, and it just maybe even Maruo Suehiro has mellowed
with age,
possibly, and his take on the GASH Street Kids is just around the corner.
We can only hope.
Dennis the Menace down in the sewer pulling Walter Softy down the toilet and making him eat turds. Calamity James already has the squelchy things.
He does have the squelchy things. Yeah. I think he's the artist for it for sure.
Jonah would sink ships, except he'd also like rescue like female survivors and then rape them to death or something. Or there's a million ways you can redo the Beano, but in a way that would the Viz take on it seem quite wholesome.
Yes.
Right? Any more to say, Nick? I mean,
no. I guess just if you're, let the reader beware. I guess if you think this might be your cup of tea, then by all means. But if you suspect from this conversation it's not at all, then probably you're right to stay away.
Cup of turd.
Exactly. Yes.
I don't know. I mean, I agree and disagree with it. I suppose it depends on, because we live in sensitive times, right? And once upon a time, I might have said, no. If you don't think this is your cup of tea, this is exactly what you should be forced to read, right? But I'm not sure if this way of looking at things is. Well, I don't know if I believe it anymore, and also it might not be acceptable.
No, probably not.
So yes,
if you are a young edgelord, if you're 20, 21 and you want to see some of the more
I would disagree with you.
At the same time, as I say, some of the more extreme sort of Japanese comics of the last 20, 30, 40 years. But at the same time, you want something that does actually have some value beyond beyond just that stuff, but something that has the a unique perspective of an artist whose interests and obsessions are very much on the page. Then by all means, if you are somebody who's squeamish in any way, if you are somebody who who you think this is not going to work for you, then stay by all means, stay well away.
Read it immediately. And if you are one of those edgelords, no, I mean, yeah, you might want to graduate. It's childish. Read something that has a bit more to it, right?
A bit more grit and gravitas.
Yeah, that's because I genuinely think these are, these are legitimate artistic expressions, and we need not apologize, or pretend that, the wallowing in it is part of, that's part of the exorcism, right? That's part of what, we talked about this before in another show when we were talking about why Cannibal Holocaust is a masterpiece in a way, is pure alchemy. Like, parts of the reason that film is amazing is not anything that Ruggiero Deodato planned, no matter what he tells you. But we'll get to more on Lenzi, the Lenzi book about that. Yeah, so
I'm interested to know to what extent. I mean, an artist like Maruo, to what extent is he more? For some of these things, I feel like some of these people have actually they have a greater fan base outside of Japan than they maybe have in Japan. And I always wonder about people like this, right?
Maruo probably does have a fan base. The reason I mentioned this is something I forgot to mention earlier, actually, is even though he does deal in borrowed, iconography from earlier times in the Aerobro lineage, and which other artists borrowed from as well. What I realized this time, especially reading GASH INFERNO and noting the year of release and stuff like that, was I realized, oh, holy fuck, actually Maruo's stuff must have been really influential when it came out, because there's certain things in here which I think originate here, and you see to this day scattered across the world of not just films and stuff as well, but actually pornography, like straight up pornography. There's definitely some Maruo influence. Of course, not that I know anything about that. A friend of mine was telling me. His name's Nick. So
not me though. Yeah, Clive's. I think Clive has all of Clive's friends are called Nick.
This is true.
It makes it easier. Makes it easier for him because he can't remember people's names very well.
I don't befriend. In fact, sometimes I change people's names to Nick.
Yeah,
just to make it simpler. Like Triggered as in Only Fools and Horses, right? Everyone called Dave, right?
Yeah. Anyway, we should wrap this up. I think. I think we've done a reasonable job of letting you know what you're getting into if you go anywhere near this.
Yeah, I think that's it. I can't think of anything else to do. So now that we've mentioned Only Fools and Horses, I think I'll just sing the theme too. You can join me.
Please do.
Yes, stick a pony in your pocket. Fetch the suitcase from the back. Because if you want the bestions and you don't ask questions, then brother, I'm your man.